Okay, good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining us for today's highlights. Today is Monday, April 27th, and I'm here with Dr. Stephanie Taylor, and we're just going to be looking over kind of some past history of buildings and pathogens and pandemics and everything. Um, so, uh, there's a bit of a lull right now in news, and we're starting to feel more comfortable at home. But we have to keep in mind that this pandemic is very serious. And Stephanie's going to take you through just kind of the history of how these have developed before. So, Stephanie.
Hi. Sorry, my
Everything
meeting
okay
just
there?
my meeting just decided to conk out.
Okay, so over the course of time, basically, we can look at how our housing has changed throughout the years. So 10,000 BC, we're in primitive housing, no sanitation systems or anything, living in caves. As we go forward, we start having simple sanitation in a rural village. And then the Industrial Revolution hits, we start having central sewage, water systems, and heating. And now today we have high efficient buildings, tight building spaces, really trying to conserve energy as best we can. And this evolution of building environment is really great, but there's also this underlying side. Stephanie, feel
Background.
free to jump in. Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, we've made remarkable advances, as Graham just pointed out, in our buildings. And now in 2020, we're in these tightly sealed buildings for at least for many of us during our working life, at least. We have comfortable temperatures, drier conditions. However, unfortunately, we've also seen a rise in infectious diseases. And, I don't have to convince anybody of the magnitude of the potential for a pandemic. So, one of the questions that we're now faced with is how much is this relationship like really statistically significant? Are our buildings contributing to a rise in infectious diseases? So if we go to the next slide, here we are dealing with the SARS-CoV-2 virus that causes COVID-19. The thing about this virus and this family of viruses is that the RNA viruses mutate very quickly. So if we've created an environment, such as a dry building, and there's a host population, such as humans with no immunological memory, that disease is going to be off and running, which is what we're seeing now. And next slide. And this virus, this coronavirus specifically, has mutated in such a way that it attaches deeper in our lungs than other coronaviruses that just cause the common cold. So that's why we're seeing a lot of people who have bad, lung disease and are on ventilators. There can be a rapid progression of this illness. So this is just to show you that RNA viruses in particular, and pretty much throughout the history of human beings, the epidemics and pandemics have been through RNA viruses. The SARS in 2002, MERV in 2012, H1N1, those are all RNA viruses. So as human beings, we have to really learn to manage our environment to not be as vulnerable to these pandemics. Next slide. So this is an awesome video. It shows you the organisms that we live with. And keep in mind, most of these are good for us. So I'm talking, you're breathing, droplets come out of our airways that contain all of the bacteria and viruses that are normally in our respiratory system. And you can see that our skin flakes land on surfaces. These skin flakes carry like the normal bacteria of our skin, Staph aureus, not the bad MRSA, just plain old staph. We have a lot of organisms in our digestive system that are released into the air, either through our mouth or through the other end. And but there's a very active population of microbes in our buildings that we've introduced. And again, don't get freaked out, because most of these organisms are good for us. And when, in fact, we couldn't live without bacteria and viruses in our bodies, on our bodies, and in our air and on surfaces. But some of them clearly are bad, such as this SARS-CoV-2 is causing tremendous amount of disease. So this is fascinating. The University of Oregon has showed that depending on how a building is used, designed, and ventilated, certain microbes that we've brought into the building are going to persist and some won't. So the indoor environment is now deciding which organisms are going to be around us indoors and subsequently affect our health. Next. Yeah. So if you think about this, if you think about the power of this message, the indoor environment and how we manage that actually is the environment that is going to select the organisms that surround us. And so in the case of SARS-CoV-2, another person can introduce the virus into the air, onto your skin. However, the survival of that virus in our buildings is determined by how we ventilate that building. And again, to come back to the message that Graham and I have been delivering, we know that one of the most protective things we can do for our health is to humidify from between 40 and 60% relative humidity, because below 40, many viruses, and this one is included, actually stay infectious for longer. And there are more infectious particles in the air when the air is below that relative humidity. So 40 to 60% relative humidity is very protective for this virus and for many respiratory diseases. So as we think about the bigger picture, it's not just, okay, we have to deal with COVID-19 and then we're all set. That's not the long-term picture. We need to learn to manage our buildings to contain this very healthy amount of water vapor so that we have more better defenses against future pandemics.
Okay, thanks a lot, Stephanie, for taking us through all of that. Thanks everyone for joining us today, and be sure to tune back in on Wednesday at 10:30. So we'll see you then.
Bye, everyone.